politics. In the last hour, Bernie Sanders was speaking. Coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern, Donald Trump has some event in Indiana. We're monitoring these all very, very closely, but those were the two who were supposed to be the outliers, the sort of original long-shot candidates. Are you surprised, as a Hillary Clinton supporter, that they're still hanging in there?
Yeah, Hillary's going to get the nomination, and it looks to me like Trump's going to get the nomination, too. But Bernie Sanders did start at 3% or something like that, and attracted millions and millions of particularly young people. I give him credit for it.
What do you think it is about him? Look, he said that he really wants to help people pay for education, minimum wage. He seems to be driving that conversation. You've got more than 90 businesses under this umbrella at Berkshire Hathaway, and among them some that do pay minimum wage, I believe, depending on the state, maybe Dairy Queen, for example. There is this push to go to $15 an hour in many states. It's going to happen sooner rather than later. Will it hurt your numbers out of, say, Dairy Queen if it does go to $15 an hour?
Well, Dairy Queen, like a number of the other fast foods, it's all franchise, so those people are not employees of ours, but they are employees of people that are our franchisees. And I personally think the earned income tax credit will do a lot more in terms of people who really aren't earning enough to have a decent living. And the problem with people in many jobs these days is that their market rate really, on 40-hour weeks, they can't support a family. And what they need is not necessarily a higher wage, but they need a higher income. And the earned income tax credit, in my view, is the best way to attack that problem without raising wages to the point where people lose their jobs. And we're spending $60 billion a year in this country on the earned income tax credit now, and I think that we could use a lot more and a better directed and get rid of some of the fraud, and that's the best answer.
When you bring up the word tax, separate from earned income tax credit, but all of the candidates have floated tax plans, and all of them, when they are scored independently, add to the deficit.
Of course.
They don't help the deficit.
No.
What would you say is the biggest economic change that the next president should do, must do, to close the deficit?
Yeah. Well, I don't regard a deficit of 3% or so of GDP as threatening to our economy. It's when the debt increases significantly and consistently as a percentage of GDP. But we can run a deficit, not wild deficits, not ever increasing deficits, but we can run a deficit and have a wonderful economy. And of course, we've been doing that for since World War II.
Now you sound like Dick Cheney. The deficit doesn't matter.
Moderate deficits don't matter. I mean, the truth is, the earning power of the country goes up year after year. Berkshire, 50 years ago, $3 or $4 million would have been a huge amount of debt. Now, whatever it might be, 30, 40 billion, is very easily serviceable. So the richer the country, the more debt you can take.
Ted Cruz, for example, brings up the flat tax. He likes this idea. Does a flat tax, in your mind, work?
It's terrible.
Why?
It's terrible. Because it means that my cleaning lady is going to be paying the same rate that I pay, and I don't think that makes sense in America. I've been very, very fortunate in this country, and her talents in a market system don't bring it doesn't mean I'm a superior human being or anything. I think a graduated income tax makes nothing but sense.
Look, right now, Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders are speaking at different events, and Indiana is the next primary. That's tomorrow. In fact, I think we have Jeff Flock, who, our reporter, has been on the ground listening. You're in South Bend, Jeff. You've been listening to this conversation with me and Warren. What do you think? What are you hearing on the ground that reflects anything about that?
Well, it's funny. We were just listening, and here's a former CEO of a company in Indiana. You said, when Warren Buffett said deficits don't matter, you say?
Well, the more money that's in the hands of the consumer drives consumption and drives the economy. So if we're living on a deficit, how are we helping to stimulate a global growth and advancement of our economy?
A lot of people in this line say the reason they are Trump supporters is because of his business acumen and the feeling that you've got finally a businessman who's going to be in charge of the economy. That's what drives a lot of these people to support Mr. Trump.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Warren? Jeff was just talking to them, and I know you heard,
yeah.
and people say, well, we need a businessman who's created jobs, unlike, for example, perhaps some of the candidates who don't sign checks. They spend the money that comes from that.
Well, that can be the case, but I can think of a number of businessmen that would make terrible presidents, and I can think of a number of non-business people that would make great presidents. I don't think that should be the criteria.
Hope springs eternal among a lot of people in those lines, and anybody who's showing up, Warren, to a lot of these rallies, whether it's Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz, Hillary Clinton, and they want to believe that they could maybe be the next you. Could you, do you think, in this business climate that we have, some say it's unfriendly right now, could you recreate what you've created with Berkshire Hathaway today?
Oh, yeah, business is doing terrifically in this country. Business has never accounted for a greater share in terms of GDP. Profits are at a record. No, business is doing wonderfully. You know, the Dow Jones is at roughly an all-time high. You don't have to worry about business. You have to worry about the people whose talents don't fit in well with a market economy. They're wonderful citizens. They go fight for us in wars. They bring up their kids fine, and they barely can make a living that keeps them going. And those are the people I worry about.
Yeah, got to worry about them. You got to help them. Warren Buffett, stay right here.